Well, thanks for coming in. A few questions. I don't know which GE deals with this. If you're a hacker out of Dublin, that GE deals with the hackers that haul oil out of the port in Dublin. If you're selling oil, if you have an oil tanker, is it you that deals with it, Mr. McFarland, or is it the filling stations that deal with the question?
It could be either. If you talk about a major haulier.
Well, I'll ask the question. Can somebody tell me how one morning I was on Leaders' Questions and green diesel was quoted by a large, I can name them if you want, a large operator
don't name them.
140 for green diesel and 135 for kerosene. At 5 to 1 I was on Leaders' Questions and I was at 140 and 135. That evening it went to 150 and 145, and the following morning they put it up at 160 and 155.
What date was this?
The day I was doing Leaders' Questions, I don't know when the
recently
in the last few weeks, right? The following morning it was 160. Now that oil company didn't bring in oil from Affordance Seas on 4 different locations that day. That's the first thing. But they were able to sell diesel to a person in Sligo, green diesel that day at 120, even though they were advertising this online. What type of gouging is that was going on in the green diesel sector?
I reject the characterisation of it being gouging at all.
Well, it's gouging in my opinion, because that's the facts. I looked at it. I was at a plant contractors meeting that evening in Mullingar and I had a group of people looking at what went on that day. Can anyone justify that?
Respectfully, Deputy, what is a fact is that the price rose very sharply.
It didn't rise 4 times the one day.
I'm not sure how you can say that.
Well, I know that because I know other oil companies. I'm fairly. There's a guy that actually hauls oil that lives beside me, and I talk to him regularly.
Is this one specific oil company?
Yeah.
No, I can certainly say that there are sites which would have more than 4 deliveries a day. It's entirely possible that people were buying at different prices within one day. That was happening. This is entirely unprecedented in our industry. It was certainly happening. They were
able to sell the same oil to a person that bought oil off them the following morning at 120, even though they were quoting 160. How could they do that? They sold diesel to a contractor at 120,
yes,
even though when you went online it was 160 online.
Perhaps they had a contract that required.
No, they hadn't. There was no contract.
I can't.
You were saying they were doing 2 different prices.
So I have the proof of it.
I don't know how to answer you, Deputy, in relation to.
That's what has gone on around the country. I'm a contractor. I know. I buy a fair bit of diesel, and I know what went on. And
is your point, Deputy Fitzmaurice, is that a supplier of fuel was going out charging 2 different prices to do?
I have explained that on the morning that I was doing Leaders' Questions, I can go back on track. Leo Varadkar, the Taoiseach, it was 130 and 125 for kerosene, 130. Yeah. 140, 135. 150 that evening when I was below in Mullingar at the plant contractors meeting, and the following morning. You can Google it up on the phone and you can get the quotes. And that was done. And I talked to a guy in Sligo the next morning and he was saying, Michael, diesel is going mad. And I says, what did you pay for it? And he told me. And I smiled to myself because I was after looking at this. Now, if that's not gouging, I'm a Dutchman. Let's be honest. That's the first thing I have to say to you. The second thing is, you talked about Nora there on the supplies. Is it true that a new owner of a part of 30% of Nora has taken over, or that part of the reserves that we have in this country has been sold in the last few weeks?
Nora is state-owned.
Yeah, I know that.
So there's no 30% owner of Nora.
But there's companies that store it for them, isn't that right?
Yes.
And is it true that it has gone to an English company, that there was a sale of part of the portfolio, I think it's around Rings End or somewhere? Is that right?
That would be a matter for Nora. I don't know.
Right, so you don't know. In the line of petrol, can you tell me, when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, there's always 10 cents between diesel and petrol, and I heard you saying about petrol. Funnily enough, I looked up there while you were talking on Google, and the amount of diesel cars in Europe in 2016 has reduced to what it is now since 2016. And I looked at the numbers of petrol cars. They don't seem to be much of a variance in the petrol cars. You said about refineries. Petrol is the highest grade, in my understanding, taken off at the refinery. Why has it changed during this period only? Why wasn't it changed by 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, 2 months before this ban came?
Because diesel was coming far more from Russia than our reliance on Russia for diesel was far higher than it was for petrol.
Well, if you look at the percentage, with all due respect, give me the percentage of oil that comes into Europe from Russia and that always come in as again from, say, we'll say, the Middle East.
For in the EU, 29% of oil came from Russia.
But how much of the oil, Russian oil, was coming to Ireland?
4%.
It's not really the issue. I don't know. But it's not the issue.
Is my understanding.
But it's not the issue, Deputy, because we're not a single market, and also the fuel that goes into the EU, we're competing with other EU countries to buy that. We're bidding against other EU countries, and we're on the periphery, so it costs more to get here than it does to mainland Europe. So the fact that we weren't actually getting molecules from Russia isn't with respect to the most important point. The most important point is the increase in demand and the decrease in supply, which is being felt on a macro level.
Can I ask you one question? My understanding was that the EU stated for energy that they weren't blocking Russian imports. Why do you refer that we're stopping them?
So there are no formal sanctions currently, but it is a decision that a number of companies have taken to unwind from contracts with Russia.
But when the EU didn't do it, why would you be doing it? When the EU decided for security of fuel in every country and that they will down the road try and move away from it, why are or why is those companies taking this decision when the EU, for the betterment of their people, they would do it if they could, in my opinion, but the reason being is that inflation is going to beat us, and on top of that, when you talk about 25%, or I think it's 4% that comes in here, we have contracts already with the Middle East or whatever and taking in oil. Why is there such use then to get new markets or whatever to buy from? Isn't there markets there already that we can source from?
So to come back to your first question, why have individual companies made that decision? I think they have made a decision based on one, consumer sort of sentiment, which is that we don't want to support, we wish to show our solidarity with we don't want to support Russia, we want to show solidarity with Ukraine. And individual companies taking that approach on their own bat, not just in response to consumer sentiment. In relation to, are there other markets from which we can get product? Yes, and that's the change that is happening now, has already begun to happen. So as I mentioned, Russia is kind of in a market of its own right now. It is selling to people who are prepared to deal with it. And so you will have seen at the weekend a massive order from India of Russian oil. So the fuel which was going into India is now available on global markets. We're looking at bringing that into this country. But that does sometimes mean further shipping. I'm
short on time, so I just want to get a few more in. The duty, before the duty came down, is something like 65 cent, am I right, between white diesel and green diesel? Would that be fair to say? Either 65 or 67, and it came down 15. But why, for the week or two of craziness that went on there on the price of the 55 and the 57, did it come to within 20 cent and 25 cent? Why was people quoted for home heating oil for 500 litres, €1,000, when you could actually buy white diesel for it? And why was contractors quoted 160 even it went to, 170 they went to, when you could buy white diesel, even at the dear price that they had to import it at? Why was this gap closed overnight, and what was going on in the whole market? And could you answer me another question, is how many direct importers of oil into Ireland? My understanding there might be 2 or 3, I know the names of most of them. Seven. Right. Okay, that's grand to know.
And there are no obligated parties. People
if you can hit the green diesel and the kerosene for me, I'd be much obliged, because I am at a loss to know what happened.
I follow up on that, Mr. McParland.
Yeah, but Chairman, with all due respect, there should be answers because the 65 cent, no matter what, of a difference.
Sorry, my apologies. Sorry. Just to address that question, sorry, I was thinking of a previous question. Just address that question.
You're asking me to answer specifically about one company's...
No, I'm talking about all companies. This isn't new news.
No.
This was right around Ireland.
On the one hand, you're telling me that you got certain information, it was 1.6, and you were able to talk to somebody in a different part of the country the following day, and it was a lower price.
Yeah.
We're saying that there was a broad
But
range.
wait 1 second. I've given you another scenario that happened in Ireland during that crazy 2 weeks, where if you went, any person that wanted 500 litres, first of all, they were rationed, as you pointed out earlier, and the first week, the drivers of lorries were told they were charging 800 to 830 euro for kerosene for home heating oil. That went to €1,000 for the 500 litres, which is €2 a litre anytime you do the maths. And green diesel was put down on a ration as well, and it actually was put €800, and some people had to pay more. Why was that when you talk about 65 cent, and even with the government taking off the 15 cent, which was welcome, there was still a wrong gap between it.
But there wasn't 15 cent taken off agricultural diesel.
There wasn't anything taken off. I'm on about the 65 cent of a difference that there should be always. So at €2 and add 65 cent to it, it should be 265. It never went above 225.
I think the presumption that there has to be a €65 differential is not based on facts.
It's excise. It's the difference between white diesel and green diesel. There's excise. Isn't that right?
Why would there be a situation whereby there's a difference in the excise between the normal diesel and green diesel? Why then is the differential in price between the two of them much less than the differential?
Sorry, I misunderstood the question. Sorry, apologies. I think when you have those different grades, the supply chain is different. So it may be, if you look at what the work that Nora has done over the last period, they're looking at the stock levels of agricultural diesel separately to road diesel. That's what's there. And there have been differences in the supply levels at different times, and there have been pinches on agricultural diesel at different times. It may well be reflective of that.
Well, it couldn't be reflective, because you said a while ago that was the market price that Nora let us out.
Mr. Fitzmaurice, we have to move because we're contact time.
Sure.
Yeah.